Hello everyone, we will regularly bring you stories you like. I sat frozen paralyzed as my wife of 25 years explained why she had served me with divorce papers. I only heard half of her words. Benjamin, are you listening? You appear dazed. Pay attention. Okay? It is quite significant, sorry. I became preoccupied for a moment. What exactly were you talking about? The prerequisites are straightforward. There is nothing to debate. I am not asking for anything. Could you hear it? Absolutely nothing. You keep the house, the cars, and all of the money in the bank. If you sign this, everything will be over in 3 months. I didn't know how to respond. Laura and I have been married since high school. We reared 2 stunning twin daughters. Ava and Emma attended Columbia University and studied international banking. We had a wonderful house in the suburbs and both drove Volvos. Laura owned her own credit cards and cell phone. I did not refuse her anything. I never cheated on her or assaulted her verbally or physically. Physically, she never expressed her dissatisfaction or made any complaints. I couldn't have prepared for this. I never realized anything was wrong. Perhaps that was the problem. I wasn't paying close attention, Laura. I understand the mechanics of divorce, but could you explain why it is probably too late to do anything? But I'd like to know why Laura appeared to slump in the kitchen chair. It was evident that she did not want to explain the reasons and hoped that I would simply sign the paperwork and let her leave. Just give me the brief tale. Laura, what in the hell did I do wrong? You did nothing wrong, Benjamin. You were the perfect husband. Sometimes I hoped you'd make a mistake and give me an excuse to go, but that never occurred. You've done an excellent job, raising your children and getting them into college. You always gave me everything I wanted, even when I was ridiculous. You purchased me a beautiful house that my folks like. You never assumed that you did something incorrectly because you did not do it. She looked fine for her age. 45, she had a nice skin and beautiful hair. They were light brown, and the highlighted strands glistened in the sunlight. She jogged frequently, and her physique was toned and tanned on weekday. She resembled a girl from Land's End, but when necessary, she was glamorous. Laura was just as perfect as I was, as she had claimed. I had no idea what had triggered this. Sorry, it doesn't make sense. There must be some reason. You cannot claim everything is okay and then walk away. There must be some reason. Benjamin, I'm trying not to offend you or embarrass myself. Perhaps we can leave everything as is. No, Benjamin. I've discovered someone else. He is a developer. He has a lovely apartment overlooking the river and a stunning black Mercedes. He is attractive, wealthy, and deeply in love with me. You've always been and continue to sell in a supermarket. I am not denigrating your employment because you have always taken care of us and earned enough to keep the family comfortable. However, you will always remain a grocery seller. I wanted more. I couldn't have imagined you would do this for me. You were always satisfied with what you did, and I never saw you try to improve. It was painful. I was a product manager, yet she still saw me as a clerk when I had the opportunity to progress my career and go out of town. I passed up the opportunity to save my family, and now look how I got rewarded. I was in pain, but no one needed to remind me of it. Does this well? Healthy, attractive man, have a name, Clay Manning. He is the president of Keystone Development. How long do you know him? 6 months? Have you slept with him? Laura sat up straight in her chair. Her eyes raced across the room before settling on my face. Yes, I attempted to avoid this topic, but since you insisted on bringing it up, I guess you were still married. Yes, I was still married. I cheated on you. I was an adulterer. Are you happy right now? I waited there for a bit before reaching over and handing her the divorce papers, which were signed 3 times and initialed twice. I believe he is a better man than me. I apologize for the disappointment. As I stepped up to leave the room, Laura yelled, "No, damn it, that's not why he wasn't better than you. Just different, don't leave." Believing this, Benjamin, do not dare. I'd already left by then. I was so caught up in work and interests that I didn't see Laura progressively taking her belongings out of the house. By the time she handed me the documents, she had moved the majority of her clothing and personal possessions into Clayton's flat. She carefully left all of the wedding and family photos for me to enjoy. While her absence, when I returned to my residence, she was no longer present. Her Volvo was still in the driveway, and I concluded she didn't need it anymore. She placed the power of attorney for the sale of the house and car on the kitchen table. I spent the remainder of the evening getting rid of the beer in the fridge. By this point, I had concluded it was finished, there was no turning back, and I had no desire. Laura has left and will never return. The next morning, I called work to take 3 months of overdue leave. They were always nagging me to take time off, so it was not an issue. I'd had enough vacation and sick leave. I soon called the girls at college and simply explained that we were breaking up, but I refused to provide any other information. They wanted to call Laura, but I did not have her new phone number. I had 3 months to gather my strength and decide what I wanted to accomplish. I turned off the landline, I updated my cell phone number and cancelled Laura's. The Volvo dealer gave me a low book value for Laura's vehicle. Terry Kevin, my high school friend, was now a real estate broker. To be sure, he agreed to sell the house without advertising for a modest price and a rapid settlement. I cancelled all of my credit cards and started new bank accounts. I cashed in some life insurance plans. It's time to clean the house. After examining the entire house, I gathered anything that could possibly belong to my wife. There were enough items to fill 3 garbage bags. I packed the girls' personal possessions into boxes and carried them to a warehouse near the residence. Then he spent 3 hours arranging family photos. I organized all of the girls' images in a box for them. Laura's whole photo collection was discarded. I knew it was childish, but I didn't care. The biggest issue for me was a lack of direction. I didn't know what I'd do after 3 months was up. Will I stay here or leave? Will I keep working or discover something new? I had 2 hobbies. I gathered coins. Most Indians had pennies. They were easy to assemble and widely accessible. I had pleasure buying and selling them on eBay. My second obsession was geocaching, a tourist game that involves utilizing satellite navigation devices to find caches concealed by other participants in the game. It motivated me to get outside and get some exercise. Laura despised this activity. Due to the ticks, I got poison ivy and had to walk. I couldn't see how I could make a living from any of my passions when I wasn't actively pursuing them. I spent some time reading the Wall Street Journal. Ava and Emma give me a subscription every year for Christmas. I was uninterested in stocks and bonds, but I read everything on farm commodities. I was more knowledgeable about sugar, wheat, and corn than most market analysts. Of course, it was only a hobby. I did not put any money into it. I gathered all accessible information about Keystone Development and Clayton Man Planning. Terry Kevin was able to learn more about Clayton and his current endeavor than I did. He double-checked some of the information with a friend from one of the local commercial banks. I was eager to see what he'd come up with. 7 weeks had passed. All this time, I had not seen or heard from Laura. The girls called every week, but there was no word from their mother. I had the feeling they were on my side, but Laura was their mother, and I'm sure they had to support her in some way. I had numerous yard sales and unloaded a lot of stuff. I left enough furnishings in the house to make it look good to any possible buyers. The Sunday newspaper social section included an image of Laura and Clayton. They were at a political gathering drinking wine alongside local dignitaries. A few more weeks passed. Terry put a bid on the house. It was far lower than the estimate, but they intended to finalize the purchase within 60 days, which would be perfect. He had some fascinating information regarding Clayton and wanted to discuss it. We arranged to meet for lunch. I chose to leave the house for a bit. I needed a break. Mount Hayes was a great location for trekking and geocaching. Unfortunately, I found all of the hiding locations there. However, there were 3 landmarks on the mountain. The government places landmarks all around the country to serve as control sites. Surveyors and land surveyors use these markers to define property borders. They come in various forms, but are often metal rods hammered into concrete. Finding landmarks is an interesting side game for avid geocaching enthusiasts. In addition to the jeeps, I determined that I would be able to locate all 3 landmarks on the mountain today. I would need to bring a metal detector with me. Finding a piece of rebar in the jungle is difficult, and I needed 8 jeeps will help me go to the approximate location. Madison Land Trust owns most of Mount Hayes. Its extent reached 2,000 acres, but they were continually looking to enlarge it. Much of the vacant property had been developed into subdivisions and industrial parks, and the trust had to rely on donations to exist. Next to the trust parking lot was an orchard and farmhouse for sale, complete with a large sign. After parked, I stepped up to the fence near the orchard to take a look. It was sad to think that this exquisite estate will eventually be demolished to make room for progress. Are you planning to buy it, or are you simply looking? I couldn't help but smile at the old man who was approaching me. He wore overall and a John Deere baseball cap. Instead of a straw hat, he presented himself as John Smart. If I had $1 million, I'd gladly take it from your hands. We both laughed at it. The sale should go smoothly for you. I have folks interested, but I'm trying to wait as long as possible. Why, I hoped the land trust would purchase it, but they can't seem to locate the funds. They like to leave the fruit trees in their original state. That's all right with me. Developers dislike this because they want to wreck everything. I believe this will be an excellent addition to what we now have. How can the land trust compete with larger corporations? I gave them a better deal in the catalog. It sold for $1 million, but I will give it to the trust for $600,000. The problem is that they cannot collect this money right now. If they can't complete it in 90 days, I'll have to take the option away from the developer. I'm tired of this son of a jackass calling me every week. An option does not constitute a sale, correct? No, I promised the buyer that I would sell him the land for $1 million within the next 6 months. He pays $100,000 for the option. If he fails to raise $1 million, he loses his option payment. It is a good deal for me, but I don't want him to take it. He has $1 million fixed, so he'll be fine. The problem is that he needs to acquire all 6 properties for the transaction to be completed. That is why he is willing to pay more than what the property is worth. What happens if you don't sell him? The option: he will lose his assets, fixation shares, and foundation. With the land trust unable to raise funds, Keystone appears to have a decent chance. However, if he does not receive the plot, he will forfeit the entire transaction, including the money he paid for options on the other 5 plots. It's probably around $1 million. His investors will walk away, leaving him in limbo. If I had the money, I would help you. Yes, that's what everyone says. We laughed again, and I took a walk. I discovered his mention of Keystone interesting. The landmarks were 1 mile apart as the crow flies on the mountain. It was twice as much. The first 2 landmarks were relatively simple to locate and were standard surveyor markers. The final mark was much older and more difficult to locate when I finally found it. I discovered a small brick monument with a bronze plaque attached. It was buried beneath perennial leaves and debris. I took a photograph of it for publication in a magazine. That is when my life changed. The metal detector was still activated. When I moved away from the marker, it started to squeak. It was weak, but it was definitely present. I put on my headphones and started scanning the area around 10 ft south of the landmark. Finally, I pointed it at the target and carefully began probing. Metal is rarely found in the middle of a forest. 5 minutes later, I held a small iron box in my hands. It was wrapped in heavily oiled canvas. There was a lot of rust on the outside, but the box was solid. The lock was made of heavy bronze, but it served its purpose. Quite frequently, finds of this kind, on public lands, are considered treasure and should be turned over to the government or a historical organization. For whatever reason, this option did not make sense to me. Today, I put the box in my backpack and went home. On the way home, I couldn't help but wonder what was in my little box. Gold coins were the first thing that came to mind. Perhaps it contained important documents from the Civil War, or earlier, the container's size was the only limit to the possibilities. I cleared the kitchen table, took out Foster's, the world's most popular Australian beer, and investigated his discovery. I didn't want to break the lock, but I couldn't figure out how to open it. Another way, I didn't know if the mechanism inside the lock was still working. I decided that the castle needed to be sacrificed. My bolt cutter finished the job quickly. Another piece of waxed CLE could be found inside the box. I carefully unfolded it and discovered 12 pennies. Why would someone bury 12 pennies? These were not ordinary pennies, but large old ones. The most recent date is 1840, and the oldest is 1793. Regardless of their age, the dates on each of them were easily readable. Surprisingly, they did not exhibit the green corrosion that is common on older copper coins. I've never been interested in collecting large cents because I thought I could get more bang for my buck by purchasing newer ones stamped with an Indian head. However, my grandfather had left me a book titled Penny Quirks. It discussed the various types and sizes of large cents. I found it boring because I did not have any of them. It sat on a shelf collecting dust for nearly 30 years. It will be put to good use tonight. I sat until dawn with my grandfather's book under a magnifying glass. My scanner captured stunning high-resolution photos of each coin. Every crack and scratch on the die was clearly visible, as was the condition of each coin. I slept till noon. I called work to see how things were going. I was informed that Phil Williams, one of the company's executives, had inquired about me. They knew nothing else. I had other priorities, so I did not pursue this topic. A visit to the bank was required to obtain a safe deposit box. After a few hours on the internet, I realized my pennies were worth millions of dollars. It was not a matter of age, but rather of stamp condition and type I. Now understand why drug traffickers had to go to such lengths to launder money. There was no simple way to convert my valuable coins into hard currency. We'll need to work hard while eating breakfast at IHOP. I saw another photo in the newspaper of Laura and Clayton at the opening of a new art gallery. She was dressed in a black cocktail dress and held a glass of wine or champagne. They both smiled. For the camera, looking at the photo made my next step clearer after receiving the safe deposit box. I called John Smothered and asked him to postpone any decisions. Regarding the land for a few days, he seemed happy with the call. I went to the Land Trust office and asked for information on how to donate to the organization. They were delighted to help me. There were 4 weeks left until the final divorce. For some reason, I felt like this deadline was extremely important. I spent the remainder of the day researching coin dealers and auction houses. I wasn't looking for advertising, but rather litigation. In the end, I chose Towers and Burns in New York. They were in a strong financial position and appeared to be capable of handling a contentious sale without too much trouble or publicity. I made an appointment with them for Monday afternoon. I called the girls and asked them to keep Monday morning free so we could have lunch together. The office facade at Towers and Burns was a luxurious showroom. There was plenty of glass and light. The display cases contained the usual assortment of collectibles, and the walls were adorned with additional numismatic memorabilia. I gave my last name and was led to a much less appealing area of the building. Welcome to New York. Mr. Simmons, I understand you have some interesting copper that you would like to show us. Are you new in the city? I sat down in a straight-back chair across from James Towers. His photo was in the advertisement, but he appeared 10 years older. Thank you. My daughters attend Columbia University, so I've been here before, but not for business. I don't doubt your knowledge of coins, but do you have anyone on staff who specializes in early copper coins? If so, I believe their presence would be beneficial. I am not that arrogant, and I believe it would be a good idea. He leaned toward the table's intercom. Marie let Cooken into my office. Maurice Cooken has written numerous guides to Major Street and half cents. I was pleased with the availability. Mr. Cookson also appeared older than his photographs. I don't think anyone enjoys looking older. Gentlemen, I have 12 special coins for sale. I hope to sell 4 of them today and leave the 5th for your considerable shine. I'll save the other 7 coins for later, if everything goes well. Today I will offer them to you too. I know it seems incredible, but I think that 6 coins will fall under the status census of state. I'm sure Mr. Cookson will determine whether I'm close or not, since cents from census of state don't come on the market very often. I was hoping you might be interested. Where do these coins come from? My grandfather left them to me when he died. I don't want to offend you, Mr. Simmons, but this story is hard to believe. What do you want to show us? I laid out 4 photographs on the table. Each one featured the averse and reverse of one of the coins I was offering today. They were about 5 times the normal size and very clear. James and Maurice looked at each photograph for several minutes. Finally, James spoke. What do you want? For these 4, having briefly looked at the results of the latest auctions, I came to the conclusion that they could fetch about 1,300. I thought about 100, but your figure is not excluded. Maurice really knew his pennies. I only want 800,000, but it must be decorated in a special way. James leaned back in his chair and smiled. I think we can handle it. What special method are you talking about? I had a letter that I picked up from the Land Trust that explained how to donate the land. I gave it to Mr. Towers, along with an advertisement for the sale of John Schmurder Orchard. I want you to buy this piece of land and give it as a gift. Land Trust. Madison, the price is $600,000. You will get a very good tax deduction and become humanitarians. I'll take the rest of the money in cash. Give us a minute, please. James and Maurice went to the other end of the room. A few minutes later, Maurice left. James returned to the table. Do you have any coins with you? Yes. I also have a 5th coin that I would like to leave with you. Mr. Cookson returned to the table with a purple Crown Royal bag. This time he said, we are ready to fulfill your conditions for the first part of the deal and hope that you can fulfill ours for the second part. He then dumped the purple bag onto the desk. It contained almost 100 different coins, mostly gold, but there were also silver ones. The retail price of this collection is close to $300,000 for a number of reasons that we will not discuss. It is difficult for us to sell them. However, you won't have any problems. I understand that you have already sold coins on eBay. This is true. I simply nodded. These coins, which you inherited from your grandfather, should be easy to sell, and we will both benefit. I assure you that you will not have any difficulties. This was said with a slight wink. I thought about it a bit and agreed. I handed 4 pennies to Mr. Towers, and we all shook hands. Now, Mr. Simmons, tell us about this 5th coin. I held the photograph in my hand and looked at Mr. Cookson. What was the highest rating? for strawberry nickname of the coin is Strawberry 1793 that you've ever seen. I've actually never seen a strawberry like this, but I think the highest rating is fair 12. I rated it a good 8. But I'm not a professional. He didn't look at the photo. He looked at my face when I said it. Both tried to look at the photo at the same time. Cookson smiled widely, and I saw dollar signs and Towers' eyes. How many the best offer is, if you can figure out how to pay me, would you like a cup of coffee? Mr. Simmons, of course. Black will be just right. They both left the room with the photo, and a few minutes later, the young woman brought me a cup of coffee. Mr. Towers will be with you in a few minutes. He needs to make some phone calls. Will you be okay? I nodded affirmatively and began to enjoy my coffee. 30 minutes passed when Towers returned to the room with an absolutely beautiful lady. She had dark eyes, black hair, and appears to be of Middle Eastern descent. I guessed that she was no more than 30. She was well dressed and carried herself confidently for a second. I thought I recognized her, but I couldn't remember where. Hello, my name is Leticia Rothberg. Do you have a passport? Mr. Simmons, her voice was deep, but still feminine. Yes, fine. We'll be flying to Kennedy soon to open a new offshore bank account for you. Do you have anything to tell Mr. Towers? I handed James a 1993 strawberry, and he looked like a little boy at Christmas. Thank you. Thank you, he said. Leaving the room, we never agreed on a price, but I still had 7 coins that Towers wanted. Mr. Towers agreed to hold the small bag of coins. Until I returned, an hour later, we were already on the plane, flying to the Cayman Islands. She hardly spoke when we arrived at the airport. Several photographers were persistently trying to photograph her. She looked annoyed, but at the same time, she smiled sweetly. I had no idea what the reason for this interest was. It was my first flight in first class, and it ended too early. A bright yellow mini SUV was waiting for us at the terminal. My owner didn't hesitate to hike her skirt up to her hips as she slid into the driver's seat. To my embarrassment, she caught me sneaking a look at her tanned legs. She seemed amused by my discomfort. 20 minutes later, we parked on the lower level of a mid-sized condominium building. Leticia Berber owned the entire building, but she had her own private apartment on the top floor. Can I get you anything? Mr. Simmons' beer would be nice. The view of her leaving the room was as good as the glimpse of her legs in the terminal. It's not in my nature to stare at young women, but Leticia Rothberg was special. We walked out onto a small balcony overlooking the ocean. It was beautiful there, but the wind was too strong for my taste. She was probably trying to impress me with the grandeur of the place. It was nice, but I was more interested in the new bank account I was getting. You don't talk much, Mr. Simmons. Surely you have a few questions that you would like answered. It seems strange to me that a woman of her class and position should drink beer from a bottle. I could imagine her sucking champagne or martini, but not beer. She won't have this figure for long if she continues. Usually I think it's better to wait, but I suppose you could tell me why we needed to come here to open a bank account. This is a simple, reliable and safe place to receive money. I think it will be good for you. It's just 1 coin. Yes? But you have 7 more, sorry. But this still seems excessive to my delight. We returned inside, away from the wind. Can you accept this? I brought you here to become my slave. For a few days, I have to admit that the unexpected comment made me smile. I automatically knew it was nonsense, but I still found it funny. She had a sense of humor. She was beautiful and rich. What more could a man dream of? If only I were 10 years younger. It's not good to tease an old morn. We both enjoyed laughing at the situation. Let's go, Mr. Simmons. Let's go get some fresh lobsters for dinner. We finished our long necks and walked out the door. The restaurant and food were great. I didn't really like the wine the hostess chose, but I tried to be nice. Did not work out what's wrong with the wine. Mr. Simmons, was that obvious? Sorry, it was unintentional, a kind of reflex action. When I was 18, I got drunk like a dog on cheap white wine, neither before nor after. This have I ever been so unhappy. Every time I smell or taste white wine, I feel nauseous. I can't explain it. It's good wine, but don't worry about it. 5 minutes later, we had 2 cold ones. Long necks, oddly enough. There was little conversation during the meal. Each of us finished the meal with fruit sherbet and coffee. Tell me about you. Are you married? Do you have any children? What do you do for a living? We've been here all evening, and I'm dying to know what brought us together. These are a lot of questions. I have 2 daughters. Both are at Columbia University studying international banking or something like that. Actually, I do not know. I'm just paying tuition. This is interesting. I have a master's degree from Columbia University, and I'm one of their guest lecturers. I have to meet them both. Did you see them this morning? We had lunch together. They hate it. When I make them miss classes, you must have gotten married early if you have 2 girls in college. Sounds like something a guy might say. I felt comfortable with this Mediterranean beauty. I could talk to her all evening. I am currently separated from my wife. Strange words. I never thought I could use it. She left me for a rich schemer. I think he is building shopping centers or business complexes. In any case, he has a luxury car in a large apartment. She said that she decided to change me. The divorce will be final in approximately 4 weeks. This is a stupid reason to leave a good marriage. I'm guessing everything was fine until she met this guy. Maybe she was never happy with my choice of work. I had several opportunities to advance, but she refused to move. And I wasn't happy about it, but I decided it was necessary to save the marriage. Now I feel like nothing. And what are you doing? There was an awkward pause on my part. How do you tell a beautiful, rich, successful woman that you are a produce manager at a supermarket? She noticed my discomfort and responded accordingly. It doesn't matter. We can talk about this later. No, it's fine. I'm not ashamed of what I do. It's just that the job of a grocery sales manager in a supermarket is not a job that impresses the ladies. It doesn't bother my daughters, but my wife often purposely forgot to mention it to people. I could tell it was bothering her. Do you like what you do? Yes, and I'm good at it. The waiter brought more coffee and cleared the table. Mr. Simmons, I understand that you have only known me for a short time, but I believe that first impressions are very important. In short, what is your first impression of me? The question put me in an awkward position. If I answered honestly, I might push her away, and if I tried to butter her up, I was sure that she would see right through it and think I was fake. What to do in short, I see you as beautiful, smart, educated, and confident. Her head was slightly tilted down, and her eyes were looking at me. I noticed a small smirk. I was hoping for some honesty. Sorry, but we had such a pleasant evening that I didn't want to ruin it. Is your true opinion of me really that bad? I don't want you to be offended by me. Maybe that's why your wife left you for another man. If you weren't always trying to please her, your marriage would be stronger. It was mean, but I had to admit that there was some truth to it. Miss Rothberg, I believe that you are cunning and manipulate people. You use your beauty and charm to get what you want. You're used to getting your way. And I feel like you're a bit of a spoiled child. You play with men, but are afraid of commitment. A parent, you know how to make money as well as spend and invest it wisely. If you weren't so obsessed with proving that you're as good as any man, you'd probably make a good mother. I felt uneasy after saying this, but she made me angry with her comment about my marriage. For a few moments, we just sat and looked at each other. Do you really think I would be a good mother? My mood suddenly improved dramatically. On the short drive back to the condo, everything was pleasant again. I knew she heard everything I said, but she seemed to accept it without any argument. She needed the truth, and I gave it to her, knowing she was not upset. I felt better about being honest with her. My night as Letitia Rothberg's slave proved to be a touch boring. It's impossible to have love in separate bedrooms. Okay, I wasn't expecting much anyway. The following morning, I awoke to find a breakfast of fruit Danish pastries, hot coffee, and a copy of the Wall Street Journal waiting for me. The wind slowed down, and I loved lounging on the balcony that overlooked the Caribbean. I could get used to it. Letitia arrived approximately 20 minutes later and humorously swiped a portion of the newspaper. We sat in solitude, reading and drinking coffee, as if we had done so for years. I'd only known this woman for a day, but she exuded naturalness and comfort. I'm scared my phone doesn't function here, and I desperately want to call my girls. Letitia gave me her mobile phone. Be my guest. Ava, this is Dad. Where are you now? Is everything okay? The phone says, London, I am in the Cayman, and everything is wonderful. I just wanted to let you two know that I wasn't going home right away and was staying with a buddy. I needed to use her phone. Your photograph was featured on television last night. They showed you boarding a plane with Letitia Rothberg. What exactly are you doing with Letitia Rothberg? She is my friend with whom I am residing. What is the big deal? Why are you with her? Everything's fine. Nothing is happening. I cannot understand your anxiety. Dad, this woman is a barracuda. She eats men for breakfast. Letitia was bringing the breakfast tray from the balcony as she passed by. I could not help myself. This is Ava, my daughter. She's in New York. She warned me to be careful because you are a barracuda. Of course, Ava overheard me say this. It flies, and let out a loud groan into the phone. I could tell Ava and Emma were immediately debating something on the other end. Why are you there? How do you know her? When are you going to return home? Before I could answer any of her queries, Letitia had already stood with her hand outstretched, waiting for me to offer her the phone. Hello, Ava. This is Letitia. Your dad informed me about you and your sister. I'll be in New York tomorrow and would like to have lunch with you. Where might I pick you up? Of course, there was no way I could hear the other side of the conversation. Who is the professor? Not an issue. I will pick you up from class at 11 a.m. Okay? I say goodbye to you. Bye, Letitia. Returned my phone. Your daughter said goodbye tomorrow. I'll join them for lunch. I pledge to be pleasant, even if they think I am a fish. She giggled softly before wriggling her buttocks, and entering her room, we arrived at the Federal Reserve Bank of the Cayman Islands an hour later. Guided by the owner's extensive knowledge, I opened my first offshore bank account, and 20 minutes later, Towers and Burns transferred $4 million to my new account. I decided it was a reasonable price for a 2.15-year-old penny. After lunch, she asked a buddy to accompany us to feed the manta rays this sort of stingray during dinner. I questioned her why she worked for a firm like Towers and Burns, and she revealed that she owned 60% of the company's shares. What else can you reveal about yourself? Apparently, you are a prominent participant in the global financial sphere, and I'm embarrassed to admit that I know nothing about you. I was born and raised in London. My father is Israeli, while my mother is Turkish. I got my MBA from Columbia University. I am not married, but I have been engaged twice. I haven't been in a significant relationship for over 3 years. I learned not to trust men who expressed interest in me. I guess you might call me cynical, but it appears that the majority of them want something from me, but they have nothing to offer in exchange. It's sad. I hope they will offer you a ride back to the condo. Does this reply that you do not trust me? You need to take this seriously. You giant. Sorry if I appeared insensitive. I did not want this. It's probably difficult for me to relate to your predicament. I'll strive to do better. Okay, let us rest. We need to attend the party. We finished the evening with a cocktail party. In one of the large hotels, everyone recognized her and treated her as a celebrity. I spent the evening attempting to be even more inconspicuous than I already was. I still wore the city clothing I had worn in New York. I had no notion I'd be traveling to the tropics. At first, Leticia appeared obligated to join me, but I persuaded her to let me have fun and integrate into an environment where I felt comfortable. She attempted, but spent the most of the evening continually checking on me anyway. I found myself conversing with a pair of Latin American gentlemen, cattle farmers from Argentina. The talk began with football and then progressed to fishing. Fortunately, the talk was in English. For my benefit, I imagine one of them commented on Leticia's attractiveness, unaware that I was her escort for the evening. I was slightly flattered. My contribution to the conversation consisted primarily of grins and nods. I didn't know enough about any of the issues to contribute anything meaningful until Ramon Duarte brought up the subject of investing. He was interested in winter wheat. I listened as he outlined in detail why he was going to invest a large sum of money in something he had no prior knowledge of. He appeared to be incredibly wealthy, and I was baffled as to how he managed it. I generally take pride in keeping a poker face, but it appears I didn't this time. Mr. Simmons, I can see from the expression on your face that you disagree with me about investing in winter wheat. I was captured, I needed to remain invisible and unheard. My invisibility cloak failed me. I am deeply sorry. Ramon, I am afraid I am not an investor and do not comprehend the complexities of this situation. I addressed him by his first name, since I felt embarrassed addressing him properly, perhaps so, but I have a feeling you have your own thoughts on the topic. I'll pester you until you tell us I was imprisoned. I attempted to fake a little smile. I need to drink something refreshing for the next hour. The two guys listened closely as an Alabama fruit and vegetable salesman told how the excellent winter wheat harvest in Alberta and Saskatchewan more than compensated for the dismal harvest in the United States. The Canadian Grain Board leased all available silos in North and South Dakota to store surplus grain, and it even reserved railroad wagons for short-term storage, winter wheat. Futures will decrease throughout the week, continuing until the market stabilizes. Both Canada and the United States will be forced to unload wheat abroad. I was out of clever comments when Leticia approached Ramon and his friend. They were flattered that she had joined our small group and were completely startled when she took my hand and dragged me away. What the heck was that, Benjamin? We were just talking about food. She offered me a little smile as we left for the condo. The following morning, we traveled back to New York, where a crowd of cameras awaited her arrival. The messenger from Towers and Burns handed me a tiny package containing the coins I had left behind. We were with Leticia. We said our goodbyes, and I proceeded to the computer terminal for my return flight to Huntsville. The divorce and sale of the house proceeded as anticipated. Phil Williams from the main office left many messages requesting me to contact him. They again asked me to consider relocating to the company's headquarters in New York. This time I agreed. John Smart has also left a message. He requested to meet for lunch. I cleaned up my locker at work and wished my shift workers the best of luck. The newspaper published a photo of Clayton and Laura at a cookout for one of the local lawmakers. They looked like a beautiful couple. It took me all day to scan and identify every coin in the New York bag. With 3 weeks until I leave, I determined to list them on eBay as quickly as possible. Everything should be good till I come across some defaulters. It took a whole day to list the coins for sale and prepare all of the envelopes and blank labels for shipment. All of the money flowed into my PayPal account, which was then transferred to my new offshore bank. I now had the weekend to relax. My Friday lunch with John Smart was interesting. John was delighted that I had set Clayton up, but disappointed that I had received nothing in return. It would be really tough to explain this to him. The lunch went well, and before departing, he handed me the deeds, to 5 acres of land. On the outskirts of town, he and his wife were traveling for Florida, and he wanted to make sure the house was in order before leaving. No good deed is without recompense. My cell phone rang shortly after John and I had broken up. Ava and Emma arrive in Nashville. In 2 hours, I had ample time to get there and pick them up airfare. To Nashville was half the price of Huntsville, and the girls had a budget. I arrived and picked them up without any issues. Ava was excited to tell me about it. On the way home, the Advanced Corporate Finance course was given in the lecture hall for about 300 students. Halfway through the lesson, the professor paused to introduce Letitia to the class. She just showed up, as if she owned the place. She spoke to the class for around 10 minutes. Minutes before announcing that she wanted 2 pupils for lunch at the Westin Hotel. We couldn't believe it when she spoke our names. So you liked her. She is fantastic. Dad, how did you manage to meet her? Well, she stated she was looking for a slave, and I was her top pick. Emma struck me on the shoulder. It is not funny. Be serious. Okay, what did you chat about throughout dinner? She inquired about our involvement in school issues. Emma giggled slightly. She had several inquiries about you, and I agreed that she was interested in more than simply friendships. I am 10 years older than her and a few dollars poorer. Sorry, girls, but she's totally out of my league, Dad. She can choose any man she wants. Why, you think about it, and leave us a hint. From our perspective, you are perfect. But Letitia Rothberg does not know you as well as we do. Apparently your mother had no idea. I don't either. For just a few minutes, everything was quiet. My comment about their mother sounded like excrement in a punch book. It was not my desire to turn my daughters against their mother, and I regret what I said. Sorry, girls, it did not sound right. Your mother is an amazing woman, and I have no right to say that. Do not worry, Dad. We comprehend more than you realize. For several miles, everything was calm. His phone buzzed immediately as we crossed the Alabama state border. Hello, pause, we came almost an hour ago. Everything's fine. Pause, you are kidding? Pause, that sounds great. I will tell him thank you for the call. By in the rearview mirror, I spotted Emma giving Ava a thumbs up. What was it? Emma leaned over the front seat of the vehicle. Guess what Dad Letitia flies into? Huntsville on Tuesday morning. She stated that you owe her for an overnight stay, and she expects breakfast in bed. I was flattered to hear the news, but I felt pressed by Letitia, and now my girls, it all sounded terrific, and I was confident that I would be up for the challenge, if not more. The weekend with the girls was fantastic. They spent Saturday afternoons with their mother and never met Clayton. I asked them not to mention the insects we had sorted out, everything they wanted to keep. By the time they left, we had arranged everything. I paid for storage until they graduated from school. When we returned to Nashville, they made me pledge to be friendly with Letitia. When I inquired what they meant, Ava replied, "Just don't make her angry." It was straightforward enough. They were pleased that I was moving to the city. I still didn't get it. It flies when you need it. From an elderly man who does not even own an Armani outfit. When I came home, I relaxed with a beer and the Sunday paper this week. There were no images of Laura and Clayton, but there was a brief mention of Keystone Development having difficulty funding a local project. Winter wheat futures prices have fallen to a historic low. It was intriguing. I called Terry Kevin and asked him to come. It wasn't lunchtime, but I thought we might discuss over a few beers. Clayton Manning has had a checkered history, to say the least. He's been either broke or wealthy for the past few years. He moved frequently in order to avoid creditors and people who provided him money. His new project started to fail. The people and investors who backed him vanished. I'd never tasted beer that wonderful. Monday morning went better than expected, The coins I put up for sale sold far better than I had anticipated. Cookson put the coin's value at around $300,000. It didn't look like they'd get that high, but they were on track to surpass $200,000 in a little more than 2 weeks. I will be free 3 months ago. I would have thought this was bad, but today I was looking forward to it. The buyers had agreed to finance and were ready to close. I thought it was strange that Laura felt so at ease with Clayton that she didn't require any of our common belongings at 3. I worried if she recognized how uncertain her future was. I met with the people that bought the house. The payment for $200,000 was promptly transferred into my offshore account. They didn't mind that I stayed in the house for another week. This suited both of us. The phone rang the next morning before I could finish my coffee. Mrs. Rothberg was scheduled to arrive at 10:45 a.m., according to an unnamed source aboard Delta flight. 7:24 30 minutes early. Yes. I was slightly concerned in one way or another. Several paparazzi learned of her coming and waited at the terminal. I did my best to be invisible. I put my automobile in a short-term parking lot because I hadn't anticipated such attention. Rather than waiting for me to pick her up, she chose to walk with me to the car. Of course, the photographers remembered my car's license plate number, and the secret was out. I'm not used to such a fuss, but Letitia didn't seem disturbed at all. She apologized to me for this on the way home. I couldn't stop thinking that when she came off the plane, I wanted to kiss her foolish old man. I felt embarrassed by the lack of furnishings in the house for the previous few months. I've got rid of everything I could. Only the fundamentals remained for which the new owner committed to be responsible after I left. My visitors appeared amused by my attempts to apologize. There was nothing in the home to eat, so we went to the nearby Taco Bell. She chose dinner. I promised her dreamy ribs. It was pleasant to be around a woman with a good appetite. Letitia, I am delighted you are here, although I do not understand why I assumed you'd get back to business. This is business, idiot. I understand you're moving to New York next week. You need a place to stay, and I have a spare bedroom. I'm here to help you pack your belongings. A truck will arrive tomorrow morning to transport everything that cannot fit in the car. Simply no furniture, please. How did you know I was moving? That is what I do. If I focus on the small things, the larger things will come automatically. This is absolute. But I've always wanted to say it. Are you in league with my daughters? I attempted to smile innocently as I stated this, but the elderly man found it difficult to appear devious. Her offer was unexpected, but I couldn't think of a single reason to turn it down. Certainly now, let's get some boxes and start packing. I assumed she would have preferred to sit in a boardroom or a bank somewhere, but she seemed to enjoy simply being with me. I still felt weird about the age gap. We ended up tossing away more items than we collected. She had strong feelings about my clothes and refused to listen to my appeals for mercy. As soon as I arrived in New York, she promised to take me shopping for appropriate clothing when we were finished. There were too many boxes to put in my car. However, this is insufficient to cover the moving vehicle. I hoped she would order a little truck. I set aside my laptop and little inkjet printer to look through the items on eBay. We were going to head out for supper when a new surprise appeared. An RV was parked in front of the home. Later, she saw a driver in an exquisite uniform emerge from the cab with a tablet. Are you Benjamin Simmons? Yes, I've got a delivery for you. Where should you place it? What the heck is their car? This comes from Mr. Ramon Duarte. Do you have space in your garage? Laura's Volvo had previously parked in the garage, but the space was now empty. I nodded as I pointed in that direction. I noticed Letitia put her palm to her mouth and giggled. I'm not sure, but I assume she was amused by my perplexity. 5 minutes later, I was looking at the shiny orange sports car parked next to my old Volvo. What the heck is this? The courier expressed considerable pride. This is a 2008 Lamborghini Gallardo Spider Superleggera model. Isn't this the most stunning thing you've ever seen? Leticia could not stop laughing. She wasn't loud or anything, but she clearly appreciated it. I signed the delivery paperwork, allowing the gorgeous uniform to travel home. I had no idea what I was going to do with my gift, but I knew I wasn't going to bring it with me to New York, get into the Volvo Little Miss Funny Pants. My guest was still smiling. As we drove out of the driveway, I placed a big order of ribs and 2 Fosters. Could you please clarify what the story is with the car? Ramon didn't have time to purchase winter wheat. Everyone believed he was insane when the price started falling. He doubled the contracts in less than a week. He made over $40 million. He was pleased with the money, but he was overjoyed with the feedback he received about his wise decision. Good for Ramon. I'm just hoping he didn't disclose my name. He wanted to give you credit, but not without your permission. He thanked me for bringing you to the party and requested your address. However, I had no idea he was going to do this. The ribs arrived, and I watched with interest as Leticia dipped a few of them in Tabasco before eating. God, I adore this girl. You are aware of this. I'll send him back in the morning, right? I thought so. Don't worry about it. Ramon will not be insulted. He would have cheerfully accepted your money, but he probably assumed you would refuse. The Tabasco will make you feel more obligated to leave the money. We were obliged to order a few additional bottles of beer. I felt great and didn't want to go home at the moment. I'd give anything to spend the night in bed with this stunning young vixen. I envied the suave, gallant boy lovers who could entice any girl into bed in 5 minutes. All I could hope for was a kiss. Good we couldn't converse all evening, so I had to go home the following morning. Was simply beautiful. All of my concerns were in vain. Leticia took my hand as soon as we walked inside the house and led me to the bedroom. Because I was a great gentleman, I made every effort to prioritize her needs. I was rewarded with the best night of love of my solitary life. Breakfast and bed included juice, coffee, and Danish pastries. I'm extremely sorry, but this is the best I can do. Given the situation, this was the best I could hope for. Attempting to eat off a tray in bed is quite painful. After a few laughs and rearrangements, we retired to the kitchen. Breakfast in bed. Sounds cleaner than it is. Leticia, I don't want to ruin the moment, but I'm curious why you chose me. I have nothing to offer, but you deserve so much more. I've been burnt numerous times by brilliant, gallant young lovers. I will not fall into this trap again. I understand I am drawn to you because I am neither smooth nor gallant. My visitors found it hilarious and laughed a little. Benjamin. I was impressed with the agreement you negotiated with James in New York. I was only selling a few cents. Not so foolish, I found your suggested land trust contribution agreement intriguing. Do you feel I'm a philanthropist? Not at all. I see as a crafty jerk who took advantage of a rare scenario, despite the fact that his wife had a partner. Of course, this made me smile. I was astounded by her intelligence and ability to hit the target. Was it wrong? No, Benjamin. That was great. I was impressed, and I wanted to learn more about you in New York. You would have had no idea what I was up to. I know exactly what you did, but I didn't figure out why, until several days later. Have you checked me? Of course, I am not stupid. I must admit that the boost in self-esteem felt pleasant. Unfortunately, Leticia traveled into New York early in the morning. I hated to see her go. She left me with a glad heart, and the key to her apartment. The Lamborghini dealer could only come pick up the car the following day. It was fine, because I did not intend to ride it. The movers arrived in a small truck and collected my possessions before leaving for New York. Kevin called to report that Keystone Development was having major financial troubles. Clayton looked to have inexplicably lost nearly all of his investors virtually overnight. There were rumors that people were taking Clayton's outstanding deposits that evening. My almost ex-wife paid me a visit. What do I owe this unexpected pleasure? I couldn't stop myself from being sarcastic. I need to chat to you about some issues. I am departing in a few days, but I'll help you in any way I can. I wanted to borrow my old Volvo, but I saw it was not there. What's that? There's an orange automobile in the garage. Things were beginning to get intriguing. Sorry, Laura, when you said you didn't want your old Volvo, I sold it back to the dealership, if you check. He may still have it, crap. I've never heard Laura use that term before. The orange automobile was a present, but I'll return it tomorrow. I cannot image myself driving something like that. The label on the window said, 225,000 plus. Who could give you such a gift? Your new friend. No, I helped an Argentine cattle farmer a few weeks ago. He merely wanted to express his gratitude. So what else can I do to aid you there? A pause in the talk. I knew Laura wanted to say something additional, but didn't know how. Do you want something to drink? I've got a beer and some Diet Coke. No, I can't linger. How did you get here? I do not see the car. I took a cab. Benjamin, you mentioned you were leaving in a few days. Is it okay if I stay inside the house for a while? The house has sold. We finished the transaction yesterday, and the new owners will relocate their possessions this weekend. They let me stay until Friday, but no more. What's wrong with having an apartment beside the river? She did not respond to this inquiry. There was a short pause. Then she inquired about what happened to the money you received for the house. Things were becoming increasingly fascinating. I was beginning to appreciate how this conversation was evolving. Everything's gone. You made it plain that you do not require any of this. I used the money I had to purchase a new apartment where I would relocate. Where are you moving to? New York. I was promoted, and my compensation increased significantly. I should be there on Monday. I was not going to tell Laura. I was going to live with Letitia. I also decided not to tell her about the Seaman bank account. You never told me what happened with the apartment. It was just rented. The lease had ended, and the owner did not wish to extend it. Where are you living now? We are staying at the Holiday Inn till Clayton finds a new home to reside. I now see why she wanted to move into our old house. Laura seemed a little perplexed. She wanted to beg for aid, but didn't. How to do so? I realized she was in trouble. There was another lull in the talk. Is there something else I can do for you? Could you offer me a lift back to the resort? For the first half of the trip passed in quiet. I understand you've got a girlfriend. Tell me about her. She is not truly a friend, but more a business associate. What kind of business? You're not doing any business. You're correct. I am merely a grocery clerk. I can't fool you, right? Laura went silent. She was looking out the window, and I could hear her whisper to herself, "Jerk." This was the time for me to vent my frustrations. This was an excellent opportunity to express how deeply the photos in the media had touched her. But instead I simply grinned to myself. She was remorseful, and I was rewarded. For a little period, I felt uneasy, but it passed swiftly. I dropped her off at the motel's entrance. She departed without looking back or saying goodbye. I hate to admit it, but I felt some satisfaction. It has been a good week. On Thursday morning, I received surprise divorce papers. They arrived ahead of schedule. But who am I to complain? On the front page of the Huntsville paper, it was a photo of Letitia Rothberg arriving at the airport. Your humble servant held her hand. A free copy of the newspaper is sent to each holiday. In room, Laura can read it during breakfast. I felt confident that Clayton would tell her who Letitia was. I emptied the bank safe deposit box. My 7p will prove use in the near future. I expected Letitia to ask about them while she was here, but she never did. All of our conversations were completely secular. She never expressed an interest in me for business reasons I've included. A buy it now price for all coins, up for auction. More than half of them were sold at that price. I spent the rest of the day packing up the coins that had been sold and preparing them for delivery to the post office. The remaining auctions were set to close before noon. On Friday, if everyone's payments go through, all coins will be mailed on the same day. Any unscrupulous purchasers will have to wait until Monday. I was on the road early Saturday morning. Most of the money from my PayPal account was transferred to my Cayman account. I also left a small amount in PayPal, in case I saw something I absolutely had to have. The people who bought the house arrived just as I was leaving. It benefited both of us. The trip to the north will take approximately 12 hours without delay. Letitia was at home and promised to prepare a home-cooked dinner for my arrival. I wondered who would cook it. It was nice to know that I was still man enough to win the heart of such a beauty. I had no doubt that I could meet all her expectations. I had just crossed the Virginia state line on Highway 81 when Ava called. Looks like Clayton Manning has skipped town and left Laura with no car, no place to live, no money, and a big motel bill. I asked Ava what she thinks I should do. She laughed and replied, "Smile, thank you, for taking time to hear today's story. If you enjoyed this article, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a tale to tell about your or someone else's circumstance, please don't hesitate to contact me. Take care."